Hi, my mighty friends. Welcome to my LinkedIn Live. I want to ask you something because today we're talking about our mental script. And what we're really talking about here is what are we feeding our mind? And it is such an important question to stop, pause for a moment, and really think about. So let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself mentally exhausted? Not necessarily from what you're doing, but more so from what you're thinking. And I've been there because you're running on fumes. And it's not because your to-do list is too long, but I know if we're being honest, it probably is. But because your mind has been running this marathon all day, it's full of worry, comparison, self-doubt, and overthinking. And here's what I've come to realize that our thoughts are like ingredients in this mental factory. And whatever we put in, that's what gets processed. And that's what we end up living with. That's what we end up speaking from. And that is what we end up acting out of. And I like to think of this as almost like a thought train, right? The thoughts that we feed our mind get brought downstream so far into all the other things that we do in our life. So when we're constantly feeding our minds with stress, with fear, with pressure, we can't be surprised when what ends up coming out is frustration, fatigue, burnout. And I've had those seasons where I was quote unquote doing all the right things on the outside. I was showing up, I was checking the boxes, I was being present. But on the inside, my mind was just flooded with all this noise. And guess what? That noise started to shape a few different things. It started to shape the way I spoke to myself, the energy that I carried, and also the way I showed up for my people. But when I intentionally began adding just a little bit of calm, right? A little more calm, a little more gratitude, and a little more compassion for myself, that's when things really started to shift. That's when things really started to change. And it wasn't overnight, it wasn't dramatic, but it was noticeable. Because mindset isn't just about thinking positively, it's about awareness. It's about noticing those thought patterns that are no longer serving you. And it's choosing something new, something more true, more kind, and something that'll help you feel more empowered. And that's really the invitation that I want to leave you with today is one, take a pause. And two, check in with what's feeding your mind. And three, ask yourself, is this helping me build the life I actually want? Because one of the most important things that you'll ever create starts with the thoughts that you're choosing to feed your mind today. So if this resonates with you and you're ready to feed your mind with something better, stick around, subscribe to my newsletter, Nurture and Navigate, if you haven't already, because that is where I share weekly strategies to help you stop surviving and start thriving. Thank you so much for joining me today.